Hey there! Welcome back to Color and Craft Haven, a little corner of calm where we can slow down, breathe, and add a little color to the day. Today we're talking about something that quietly sneaks into almost every creative hobby, whether we notice it or not. Symmetry. It sounds like the kind of word that escapes from a geometry textbook wearing tiny glasses and carrying a ruler, but I promise it's much friendlier than that. In fact, symmetry is one of those invisible helpers that makes designs feel satisfying, balanced, and somehow right. It's especially fascinating in origami, where a single sheet of paper can transform into something surprisingly complex, all because of careful folds and mirrored shapes. So grab your favorite drink, settle into your creative space, and let's spend some time exploring why our brains get so ridiculously excited when both sides of something decide to cooperate. If you've ever folded a piece of paper in half to make a card, you've already worked with symmetry. Congratulations, you've accidentally become a mathematician. Please don't panic. Nobody is going to ask you to solve equations today. Symmetry is simply the idea that parts of something match in a predictable way. Fold a square perfectly down the middle. Open it again, and you've created a line of symmetry. That crease isn't just a wrinkle your paper will complain about forever. It's a guide that helps everything else line up. Many origami projects begin with these simple folds because a balanced starting point makes the entire design easier to build. Think of it like laying the foundation of a house, except the house eventually becomes a crane instead of a mortgage. One of the funniest things about symmetry is how quickly we notice when it's missing. Imagine drawing two eyes on a face. One is perfectly round while the other has wandered halfway toward the person's ear. Suddenly you've gone from pleasant portrait to someone call a doctor. Our brains are incredibly good at spotting imbalance because we've evolved to recognize patterns everywhere around us. That's useful for survival, but it's also why slightly crooked artwork sometimes bothers us even when we can't explain why. The paper isn't judging you. Your ruler isn't laughing behind your back. Your wonderfully overqualified pattern-detecting brain is simply waving a tiny flag and saying, "Excuse me, something seems a little suspicious over here." Origami relies on symmetry because every fold affects the folds that come after it. Miss the center by just a couple of millimeters, and that tiny error politely invites all of its equally annoying cousins to the party. By the time you're making the final folds, suddenly your elegant swan looks like it's questioning every life decision that brought it to this point. We've all been there. You start with confidence, convinced you're about to create museum-worthy paper art, and 20 minutes later you're staring what appears to be an emotionally exhausted potato. The good news is that every experienced paper folder has produced entire flocks of emotionally exhausted potatoes before mastering cleaner folds. What's fascinating is that symmetry doesn't have to mean boring. People sometimes hear the word balanced and imagine everything becoming stiff and predictable, like a room full of accountants organizing pencils by emotional stability. In reality, symmetry often creates the structure that allows interesting details to shine. When the overall design feels balanced, your eye has the freedom to appreciate textures, colors, shadows, and tiny decorative choices without feeling overwhelmed. It's similar to reading a well-organized book. You're free to enjoy the story because your brain isn't constantly trying to figure out what on earth is happening. Organization creates freedom, which sounds backwards until you've tried finding your scissors for the 15th time. Nature absolutely loves symmetry, although it occasionally enjoys breaking its own rules just to keep things interesting. Butterflies often display mirrored wing patterns. Leaves can grow with beautiful balanced shapes. Snowflakes develop incredible repeating structures. Flowers frequently arrange petals around a central point. Our eyes have spent our entire lives looking at those patterns, so when we recreate similar ideas in art, they feel familiar and comforting. That doesn't mean every flower is perfectly identical, or every butterfly passed a geometry exam with perfect marks. Nature allows tiny imperfections, which is a wonderful reminder that handmade projects don't need laser precision to feel beautiful. There's another type of symmetry that's especially fun in design, called rotational symmetry. Instead of folding across a line, imagine spinning something around a center point and watching the pattern repeat itself. Snowflakes are wonderful examples. as are many mandalas and decorative paper-cut designs. Even simple stars often use rotational symmetry to create that satisfying sense of order. Once you begin noticing it, you'll start seeing these repeating structures everywhere. Little warning though, this may result in staring thoughtfully at floor tiles in grocery stores while everyone else wonders why you've become emotionally invested in the produce aisle ceiling decorations. Color also plays an important role in symmetrical designs. Imagine folding an intricate paper model and coloring only one side while leaving the other completely blank. That can certainly become an intentional artistic choice, but it immediately changes how balanced the piece feels when it's done. Repeating colors across matching sections helps reinforce the symmetry you've already created with folds. This doesn't mean every project requires identical colors everywhere. Sometimes repeating just a few key shades is enough to tie everything together. It's a bit like seasoning a soup. A little consistency goes a long way, while dumping the entire spice rack into the pot usually creates what scientists technically refer to as a regret. Beginners often assume that experienced paper artists never make mistakes anymore. I would like to gently introduce that myth to the recycling bin. Skilled creators absolutely make mistakes. The difference is that they've become experts at recognizing them early, adapting creatively, or pretending the usual fold was completely intentional all along. No, that's not backwards, it's an experimental interpretation. Every hobby develops this survival skill eventually. Sometimes a happy accident truly becomes the best part of a project. Other times, the project quietly becomes scrap paper designed for grocery lists. Both outcomes are completely respectable members of the creative tree family. One reason symmetry feels relaxing is that it gives your hands a rhythm to follow. Fold left, fold right, match one side, then the other. Repeat. There's something wonderfully calming about repeating familiar movements while watching a design slowly emerge from a plain square of paper. It encourages you to focus on what's happening right now, instead of worrying about everything waiting outside your crafting space. You're not solving tomorrow's problems while lining up tiny corners. You're simply making one careful fold at a time. It's surprisingly similar to meditation, except occasionally your meditation unexpectedly develops wings and refuses to stand upright without dramatic emotional support. Interestingly, symmetry also teaches patience in a very honest way. Paper doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care that you're tired, distracted, or convinced close enough should count today. If two edges don't line up, paper politely informs you immediately. It's a humble little teacher that says, "Perhaps we try that fold again?" While this can occasionally test our patience, it also builds powerful observational skills that transfer into all kinds of creative hobbies. You begin slowing down, paying attention to alignment, noticing proportions, and appreciating the difference between rushing toward the finish line and actually enjoying the process along the way. Of course, not every design has to be perfectly symmetrical. Some of the most exciting artwork deliberately breaks symmetry to create movement, surprise, or visual interest. The important part is understanding the difference between intentional imbalance and accidental imbalance. One says, "I made this choice because it supports my design." The other says, "I sneezed during step 7. And now the dragon appears mildly confused. Both tell stories, but only one usually matches the original plan. Learning symmetrical principles actually gives you more freedom because you understand when to follow the rules and when breaking them creates something even more engaging. One of my favorite things about paper crafting is how inexpensive it can be compared to many other hobbies. A simple square of paper holds an incredible amount of creative potential. There are no batteries to charge, no software updates demanding your attention, and no mysterious subscription asking for $17 a month because apparently your paper now requires premium membership. You simply sit down, make a few folds, and watch something appear that didn't exist half an hour ago. That's a remarkably satisfying feeling, especially in a world where so many things seem increasingly complicated. Sometimes a single sheet of paper quietly reminds us that creativity doesn't always need expensive equipment. As you spend more time noticing symmetry, you'll probably begin spotting it in architecture, logos, illustrations, pottery, stained glass, garden layouts, and countless everyday objects. Once your brain learns to recognize these patterns, it's surprisingly difficult to stop seeing them. It's a little like learning a new word and suddenly hearing everyone else use it. Except instead of vocabulary, you'll find yourself admiring balanced window frames while waiting for appointments or quietly appreciating decorative tiles in cafes. This is one of my favorite side effects of creative hobbies. They gently train us to notice beauty hiding in ordinary places we used to walk past without a second thought. That's it for today's colorful time. I'd love to hear about the most surprising thing you've ever made from a single sheet of paper, or whether you've ever finished an origami project that looks absolutely nothing like the instructions promised. Share your funniest paper crafting adventures in the comments below, because I know I'm not the only one who's accidentally invented entirely new species of paper birds. Take care, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one.